Hey y'all, let's explore a little bit about the quadratic formula. You're going to appreciate this, and we're going to use it next year in Algebra 2. So if you don't have it down 100% by the end of the year, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I want you to be exposed to it and do the best you can, and don't sweat it. So let's go back and look at our quadratic equation. This is, of course, a quadratic equation right here. And we know, let's factor this thing and solve it first. We know how to do this. We can look at this and go, okay, we need two numbers. And of course, it's going to be an x and an x there. These numbers multiply to give us negative 24. Well, if they multiply to give you a negative, you know it's going to be a positive and a negative. These two numbers also add to give us negative 5. So what two numbers that multiply to give you negative 24 also add to give you negative 5? Well, the answer is, of course, negative 8 and positive 3. And once we get to this point, we know we can look at this and go, okay, well then we set this up as x plus 3 is 0, which means x is equal to negative 3. And we set this up as x minus 8 equals 0, which gives us x equals 8, right? So there are our two answers, okay? Just to prove that this crazy method works, and I want you to just watch this, just so your brain starts getting trained in this method of doing the, completing the square, okay? We're gonna look at this, okay, let's just write it first. X squared minus 5x, then minus 24. I'm going to leave us a little bit of room here. Okay, we do not want this number to be negative 24. We want this number to be half a negative 5, and then squared, right? There we go. So that's going to be 25/4 on the positive side, okay? Well, we're way over at negative 24 on the number line, right? We got to go all the way 24 over to get just to 0. Then we got to go, 25/4 more, all right? So let's turn this negative 24 into a number with 4 as the denominator to match this right here, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and write, we'll go 24 times 4 is negative 96 over 4. Okay, so we're going to have to add, in other words, positive 96/4 just to get to 0, right? So once we add 96/4, we're going to have to add 25/4 more. Well, what is 96 plus 25? It's 121 over 4. So we're going to have to go over here and go 121 over 4. All right? So let's write this a little more neatly here, a little nicely. So we have x squared here. We have a negative 5x. And then we have what we want. We want 25/4 because that's what this plus this is. Okay? That equals 121 over 4. All right? Now let's go ahead and write this part as an x, minus a something inside parentheses, so we can go ahead and write it as something squared. All right, now all we need to do that is figure out, okay, what's the square root of 25 over 4? Well, we know what it is. It's 5 over 2. Okay, that equals 121 over 4. Okay, and again, in your book, if you see this, solve for x, you go, I got it, no big deal. X, I take the square root, so x minus 5 squared, that's going to be plus or minus, let's see, the square root of 121, oh, that's 11. Oh, the square root of 4 is 2. Okay, well, wait a minute, I got this. So x is going to be 5 halves plus or minus 11 halves, okay? In other words, it's going to be 5 halves plus 11 halves, or 5 halves minus 11 halves. Now you can go 5 plus 11 is 16, right? 16 divided by 2 is 8, and that's one of our answers. Well, look at there. Okay, the other thing you can do is you can go 5 minus 11 is negative 6. Negative 6 divided by 3, lo and behold, look at there. Okay, we got it. So it works. Okay, much easier to use the factor method if you can do it, but it's good practice. All right, let's take a look at the general quadratic equation. If you want to even call this thing generic, that's what it is, a generic quadratic equation, because we have a number in front of the x squared, a number in front of the x, and a certain number that's just a constant, and the whole thing equals 0, right? And we've seen them like this. Look, there it is. Circled it, and there it is right there, right? Okay, that's our quadratic equation there. Here's the generic one, all right? A is the number of x squareds, B is the number of x's, and C is the constant, okay? We're going to complete the square. We're going to do exactly the same thing to this that we've done to the ones with actual numbers in there for A, B, and C, okay? This might seem kind of convoluted. Do the best you can. You'll knock it out maybe by the end of the year. If not, we do it in Algebra 2 as well, so don't sweat it, okay? Well, let's start. We have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We're going to follow the exact same completing the square process that we have before, all right? First thing we want to do is get rid of any numbers, any number in front of that x squared, which means we'd have to divide by the a, right? And we're going to have to divide this by a as well. And we're going to have to divide this by a and then that by a, right? So let's look at what we have now that we've divided all this by a. We just have x squared, right? Now we have b over a times x. And now we have c over a. And now we have 0, right? Okay. Now we do not want that c over a there. We're going to do the same exact thing to find out what number we want there, you know, that we have before. In fact, let's go ahead and just move this ca over to the right side, which means it turns into what? You tell me. Move it over, it turns into negative ca. Okay. Okay, so this is going to be negative c over a. Okay, what do we want right here? Well, we know how to figure out what we want. We actually take this number right here, correct? Remember, we took like, oh, what do we need here? We need half of this number, -5. Oh, then we square it, okay? Do exactly the same thing. What's half of b over a? In other words, you could do it like this. What's half of b over a? Well, that'd be b over 2a, right? Okay. Well, we're going to square this now, right? Okay. So what we want here, that's going to be b squared on top, and it's going to be 2 squared is 4, and a squared is just a squared, right? There we go. Well, we added it to the left side, which means we have to add it to the right side. Okay. So we'll go b squared over 4ac. Okay, we good so far? Now, I know this is kind of complicated, but same process, all right? You tell me what we need to do now to get this going with a squared there. Okay, we know it's an x, we know it's a plus. All we need to do is go right here. What squared gives you b squared over 4a squared? And of course, the answer is just the same thing we have right here, right? It's going to be b over 2a. All right. Which is going to be, let's go ahead and just put b squared over 4a. You know what let's do? Let's go ahead and make this into one nice big fraction. How about that? Shall we? Okay. Let's make, what's the common denominator between 4a squared and just a? It'd be 4a squared, right? So we're going to need to multiply this by 4 and by a. So let's multiply this top by 4 and by a as well. Okay, so let's put the whole thing over one denominator. So b squared minus 4 times a times c, and then 4a squared. Okay, now look at this. I know we've kind of done a lot to get to this point, but what's the formula? What's the process? Look back at this real quick. What's the process when we get right here? What do we do to solve right there? We take the square root, right? Exactly. Okay. So we don't even need to think about this on the left. The square root is really easy. It's just whatever is there inside the parentheses, right? So x plus b over 2a. And this is going to be, what's the square root of this on top? No idea. It just is going to be b squared minus 4ac. We can't get a square root of that perfectly. Oh, almost forgot. Plus or minus. Okay, we do know the square root of this, however. Because the square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of a squared is just a, right? Look at those two denominators now. And there we go. Look at that. Only one step left. What is it? What's the last step we got? You got it. Move it over, right? So our new equation becomes x equals, and since these are the same denominators, let's put them all under one denominator. So the plus b over 2a turns into minus b, right? And that's going to be plus or minus there, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. All of this is over 2a. And there we go. That's how you solve for x. We're using a generic quadratic equation. Remember, a is this number in front of the x squared, b is the number in front of the x, and c is the number, just the constant. Well, look, we can take you know, in any quadratic equation and just figure out what the b is. Oh, it's this number. Oh, what? Plus or minus b squared? Oh, take that number right there and square it. 4 times a times c, and then oh, divide by 2. You got it. And there we go. Okay. All right. Let's try actually using this. Solve by completing the square. All right. Well, let's do the one couple of back here, right? Let me just show you this. We know the answer. Look at those two answers. The answer is -3 and 8, correct? Okay, let's just do this. There you go. In other words, this is the A, number 1. This is the B, -5. And this is the C, -24, right? Okay, we figured out on the next slide that x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that is all over 2a. Well, let's just start plopping stuff in there. So -b would be the opposite of opposite phi, which is 5. So plus or minus the square root of, okay, b squared is -5 squared, which is 25, minus 4 times a, which is just 1. Don't even need to write that, we'll write it anyway. And not minus 4 times a times c. Well, that's c is -24. Okay, and that's going to be all over 2 times a. Well, 2 times 1 is just 2. Okay, let's work on this junk in the middle here. All right, so we have 5 plus or minus the square root of, okay, -4 times 1 is -4. -4 times -24 is positive 96. 25 plus 96 is 121. Let me separate that there. That's going to be all over 2. Okay, well, the square root of 121 is 11. All right, so 5 plus 11 is 16 divided by 2 is 8. 5 minus 11 is -6 divided by 2, -3. And if you remember, those are our two answers. So it actually works. Kind of weird, isn't it? Okay, let's try another one. Solve by completing the square. All right, no, forget that. Let's use the quadratic formula. By using the quadratic formula. Okay, handwriting wasn't my strongest subject. Okay, let's use the quadratic formula. And then there's some kids I've talked to before. They used Pop Goes the Weasel as their little reminder on what the quadratic formula was. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Is your skin crawling yet? Okay. All right. That's what we're going to use to solve this. Okay. First off, you tell me, based on this equation, what is a? It's 3, right? Okay. What's b? 2. Okay. C is -7. You got it. Okay. Well, let's just fill in the blanks. -b, -2. Plus or minus the square root. Okay. B squared is 4 minus 4 times a, 3. C is -7 all over 2. Okay, no, I won't say that again. Okay, 2a is 2 times 3 or 6. There we go. Okay, the most challenging part is figuring out what this thing is in here. So let's leave the 4 by itself for a second. So -4 times 3 is -12. Okay, -12 times -7 is positive 84. 4 plus 84 is 88, and that's going to be over 6, okay? Now, you can actually break down 88, and don't forget, you can, kind of knock this down by, you can go, okay, that's going to be 2 times 44, and that'll be 2 times 22, and then 2 times 11, and that's pretty much, there are your 2 you can pull out. So you would say -2 plus or minus 2 goes to the outside. Then we have 22 underneath here, or underneath the radical, and then over 6. And since this, and this are all divisible by 2, we can go -1 plus or minus 1, you don't have to write it, over 22, the square root of 22 over 3. And there we go. Weird, huh? Okay, there we go. All right, and that is what we get for 119.1. Okay, let's try another one. We're going to not complete the square. This is a dirty lie. Quadratic Formula. Okay. It's like a disease I used to have. Anyway, okay. So let's solve this by completing the square. Forget it. No, we're using the quadratic formula. Okay. X equals negative b. Come on, sing along now. Plus or minus, you know what? Stop singing. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, there we go. Okay. Well, this doesn't look right. That's not in the right order. Let's get this thing in the right order. Move the negative x squared over, positive x squared. Move the positive x over, negative x. Leave the negative 6 where it is. Equals 0. Okay, you tell me, what's your a? It's 1, right? Okay, what's the b? Negative 1, right? Okay, what's the c? Negative 6. Okay, that's all we stick in here. Let's do it. Okay, we'll use an exciting color like purple. Let's sing the song first together. Okay. Negative b, which gives us positive 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared is 1, minus 4 times a, which is just 4 times 1, excuse me. Then c, we'll go ahead and do this. Yoink. Okay, there we go. All over 2a, which is over 2. Okay, well, let's do it. Negative 4 times negative 6 is positive 24. 1 plus 24 is going to be, you will not be surprised to learn, 25. And that makes it nice, right? Because we all know the square root of 25. So we have 1 plus or minus 5 over 2. Don't leave it there. We're actually going 1 plus 5 over 2 and 1 minus 5 over 2, which gives us 6 divided by 2, 3. And 1 minus 5 is negative 4 divided by 2, negative 2. And I hate to tell you this again, but if you were to look at this equation, let's rewrite it. X squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. This is one you could have said, hey, wait a minute. I know how to do this. I'm going to factor it. What two numbers multiply to give me negative 6 and add to give me negative 1? Oh, I got it. Negative 3 and positive 2. Well, look at there. There's your answers right there. All right. Let's try one more, and then we'll do some practice problems. Pause it and try it yourself and see if you can do it. Not completing the square. Quadratic formula. There we go. Okay, try the quadratic formula and pause it and come back. All right, well, first off, this doesn't look nice. It needs to be x squared over to the left. It needs to be negative x is good, and then it needs to be negative 7, and that equals 0. Okay, so we have our a is 1, our b is negative 1, and our c is negative 7. So let's sing it. Ready? Okay, forget it. Okay, x equals negative b, that's going to be a 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 1, minus 4 a c all over 2a. Okay. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 7 is 28. 1 plus 28 is 29. So it's going to be 1 plus or minus the square root of 29 over 2. Those are your two answers right there. Good enough. All right. Okay. Try practice problem A, and we'll come back together and do it. All right, quadratic formula. Anybody with perfect pitch, you just kind of like cringed just then? Okay. A is 2. B is negative 3. C is negative 7, so let's stick it in there. Negative b is 3, positive 3. Plus or minus the square root. B squared is 9, minus 4 times 2 and times negative 7 over 2a, which is 2 times 2 or 4. Okay, so down. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 7 is positive 56. And 9 plus 56 is 65. So that's good enough right there. Yep, there we go. Okay. Let's try B. Go ahead and pause it and try B. Put it in the right order first. Okay, if you put it in the right order, this is what it looks like. 2x squared plus 3x minus 1 equals 0. So you tell me A is 2, B is 3, C is negative 1. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. There we go. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 1 is just 8. 9 plus 8 is 17. So negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 17 over 4. That is it. Okay, one more lesson and Algebra 1 is done. That is it. See you guys.